Hello and welcome to the course. My name is Rick. I'll be one of your instructors on this journey for learning Unity and C#. Now, in this first section of the course, we'll be getting ourselves set up by downloading and installing Unity and Visual Studio Code, making sure that all works nicely. We'll also be showing you how to get support, where to go in terms of joining our support forums, how to ask questions so that you never get stuck. And this first section, we'll do a little bit of playing around with Unity. So if you're very new to it, if you haven't used it before, we'll just do a little bit of a familiarization in terms of how the interface works. If you've used Unity a bunch, then so long as you've got the version that we've got, which is Unity 2021, then you're good to go. You can jump to the next section of the course and start making some games. So let's get started with downloading Unity and setting everything up. Hello and welcome. Let's get downloading, because in this lecture we're going to be installing Unity Hub, Unity 2021 and Visual Studio Code. The first step in this process is for us to jump into our browser and type in download Unity Hub. Unity Hub, we can then find, it should be the very first link here, download Unity Hub. That will take you to this particular website, which is unity3d.com. And you can find the big green button which says download Unity Hub. Click on that. That will start downloading Unity Hub. Now, what is Unity Hub, you say? Well, I've already downloaded it, so I'll show you. This is Unity Hub. It's a place that you can manage all your various projects you're working on. You can see I've got a bunch here I'm working on, as well as your different installations of Unity. You can have multiple different versions of Unity going on your computer at the same time, which is really cool. And for me, I'm going to be using Unity 2021.1. You don't need to worry so much about the following dot whatevers, but I also have on my computer 2020.2 and some of the older versions. Now, once you've finished downloading Unity Hub, click on the button and follow the installation process. I know you've installed things before, so you don't need me to show you about that. One thing you might come across is at some point Unity might say you need to sign up to be a Unity person. No problems. Go through that sign up process, pop in your email address, whichever one you want to use, and the license you're looking for is the personal license, which is free up until the point where you're earning $100,000. So hopefully you get there really soon, but I'm assuming we're not there just yet in terms of using Unity. So you go through all that process. Once Unity Hub has installed, find and open that. Click on the installs button on the left hand side, click on add, and add your very first version of Unity. Now, a couple of things to point out here. LTS stands for long-term support. In general, I always recommend working on a version of Unity that has long-term support. I'm a little bit naughty. I'm working in Unity 2021 at the moment, and it doesn't yet have long-term support, but I'm doing that so that when you're watching this in the future, hopefully it will have long-term support by the time that you're getting to this and working through it. And so once you've selected the version that you're looking for, and I recommend Unity 2021 point whatever is relevant to you at this time, click on Next. And then you'll see a whole bunch of things that we can add as additional modules for this. So at the moment, I've got nothing selected. You might have the Microsoft Visual Studio community already selected. We're going to unselect that because this is the editor we type our code in. We're not going to use Visual Studio Community. We're going to be downloading something slightly different, Visual Studio Code. The reason we're using Visual Studio Code is because it looks the same on Windows and Mac and Linux, and you won't have a problem with having, if you're working on one of the other systems, I'm working in Windows, you won't have a problem with yours looking different to mine. The one other thing I'd recommend adding on here, if you scroll down and find WebGL build support, click on that so that we can install that as well. That means that we can create our games so that people can play them on a website, which is really cool, really neat. Click on that and then click on Done, and then go through that process of installing Unity. So I'm going to click on Done, and then it's going to go through that slowish process of downloading and installing in the one go. So that should all be done from that point of view. So while that's going through that process, let's go grab Visual Studio Code. Once again, type in download Visual Studio Code, or you can click on the link I've given you against this lecture in the resources section. Now, where is that? That will depend upon the platform you're viewing this video in. Our courses tend to be on a couple of different platforms, so it could be over in the right-hand side next to the video or down the bottom underneath the video, depending upon where you're watching it. So find download Visual Studio Code either by typing into Google or by clicking on the link we've given you, and then select your relevant operating system. For me, it's Windows. click on that, go through this process, it'll start downloading. Once again, wait for it to download, click on the button, go through the prompt, say yes, yes, yes to all of the good things that it asks you want to do, then you'll have that all ready to roll. So while we're downloading and installing, let me give you some context. We're using Unity, which is a game engine. Unreal is another very well-known popular game engine, and we're using Visual Studio Code as our integrated development environment, our IDE. This is a place where we type our code. So what do we get for using a game engine? Well, it's a visual interface for creating games where we get a whole bunch of systems which have existing code we can use, such as a physics system or a rendering system or an audio system, so that we don't have to go and try to code those and create those absolutely from scratch. There's so much of a head start we get by using an engine. And then what is an IDE? Well, it helps us write code to tell the game engine what to do, and it gives us a whole bunch of things like autocomplete or color coding or syntax error checking, so that as we type along, it's like a friendly assistant that'll say things like, hey Rick, you typed that wrong, you bozo, so that you can make corrections. Maybe it won't say exactly that, but you know what I mean. It's going to give you input and guidance as you go along. How do these two interface? Well, when you're creating files in Visual Studio Code, or when we create this, we'll be creating .cs files that work with Unity to tell Unity what to do. So the files that we create that are whatever .cs, I'll be referring to as scripts. Okay, so that's just a quick intro, quick overview of how these things fit together. Good luck with the downloading process. Hopefully it's going quickly for you. And in the next lecture, we'll have a little bit of a play around with the Unity interface so we can start to get our hands dirty. Okay, see you in the next lecture. Hello again. In this lecture, we'll be playing around with Unity, learning the interface, and creating a silly little pretend platformer that we will then go and take a screenshot and post on the Game Dev TV forum. So let's get started. Let's start this process by making ourselves a new project, open up Unity Hub, and then find the New button. If you've got more than one version, you can click on the little arrow to the right of New, select the version that you want, click on that, and then click on 2D to say it's a 2D type of project. Name your project. I'm going to call mine Experimenting because we're just goofing around. And then, of course, choose a location on your hard drive where it will save, and then click the Create button and we're good to go. This will take a few moments, so I'll pause my video and I'll be back when mine has loaded and ready to go. Okay, here we are in Unity. If your window layout doesn't look like this, you can jump up to Window, Layouts, and click on Default, and it should return to this default layout. You can move your windows around a whole bunch. You can move the tabs around where you want to, so grab Console tab and move it somewhere else. I'll pop it back there if I can. Yep, there we go. So you can move things around as you like, as is the case with most software nowadays. Over on the left, we have the hierarchy. If I click the little opening closey thing here, you can see in the hierarchy, we've got Sample Scene. That's the name of our project at the moment, or our level that's in our project. And I have a main camera. That's the only game object I have. If I click on main camera, you can see over on the right hand side, the inspector has lit up with a whole bunch of information, and that information is telling us all about what's going on with the camera, and we can change particular things there. So we'll come back to the inspector in a moment. I want to show you a little bit more about the layout of Unity. Down in the bottom left, we have the project tab. In here, we have the assets directory. This is where all the things that are saved on your hard drive will live. So at the moment, we just have the scenes folder. In here, we have our sample scene. This is our scene or level, depending upon what you'd like to call it. And you can see down here, it's a .unity file. That's saved on our hard drive. Anything we change within our scene will be updated within our .unity file. So our scene is in our scene window. You can see up here, we've got a tab that says scene. That's where all of our game objects will be displayed. Next to the scene tab, we have the game tab or the game window. That is showing us what we're seeing through our camera at the moment. And at the moment, there's not much of a game in there. And then we also have the asset store. That's changed a little bit. It used to be you could navigate everything in here, but now when you click, this will open up in a browser and take you to find a whole bunch of cool assets, which we'll play around with that a little bit later on in the course. For now, we're going to add a game object into our hierarchy. So find the hierarchy in this big open space in here, right click, 2D object, and then sprite. I'm going to add we'll add a square in there. You can see it's added a square in our hierarchy, and we have an opportunity to rename it. I'll just leave it as square. And in general, I'll be pretty messy in the hierarchy in this lecture because I don't want to take you through the organizing the hierarchy because that's a little bit drier. We'll do that later on. For now, I'll just sort of chuck things in there and not worry so much about whether they're named properly or nice and neat and tidy. So if I click on square in the hierarchy, it'll highlight over in the inspector what's going on with the details of the square, and it will also give me a indication that I've selected this within my scene. I'm using my mouse wheel to scroll in and out. You can also hold down Alt and right mouse button and move to the left or to the right. That is another way to zoom in and out. And if I click and hold down the middle mouse button, I can move around in my world, or pan around as the case might be. I can also come up here into the top left and click on the little hand, which is the pan tool, and then with my left mouse button I can move around in the scene. Now I've got my object in here. It's right underneath the camera, which makes it a little bit misleading. You see the main camera, the icon for that is right in the middle of where my square is. So I'm going to jump up here to my toolbar, and next to the hand I've got this four-way arrow, which is the move tool. If I click on that, or I click W on the keyboard to get this particular tool, then I've got these handles showing up on my game object. Green is to the Y direction, or up as we're looking, and red is on the X axis to the right. So if I grab the red handle and move it right and left, it allows me to move my game object right and left, and likewise with the green up and down. And also there's a little space in the middle where you can grab that and move it on both the X and the Y. So I'm going to head over to the right hand side of the screen just to draw your attention to what's going on over here. As I move it around, you can see under the position we have X and Y, and those numbers are updating as well. If I move it down, then the Y goes down. It's in -5 point something or other, and up, it's going up. So I can change the position by grabbing it and moving it around, this game object. Or I can type in a value here, say set it to 0 on the X-axis. Or I can mouse over the letter X or Y and hit my left mouse button or hold my left mouse button down. That'll allow me to drag it. We can also rotate them. So if I head up to my next icon in the top left, you can see the little arrows swirling around. I can click on that, or I can click E on the keyboard. And you can see we've got this outline around our object. If I grab onto the blue handle or the blue circle, hold down left mouse button, I can rotate around my object. Or, as we've done before, I can find where that rotation is. It's on the Z or the Z axis, and I can do the same sort of rotation there. I'll put it back to 0 for rotation for the moment. The next button along is to scale, which corresponds to R on the keyboard. That allows me to grab a handle and to move it to make it bigger or smaller. Or if you can't quite see it here, but there's a dot in the middle, that allows us to move the whole thing in a uniform way. Or, of course, we could scale using our sliders and our numbers over within the transform area. And then the last one I'll show you up here is the Rect Transform tool. Clicking on that or clicking T on the keyboard, so Q, W, E, R, T, following along on the keyboard, that allows me to grab the sides or to grab the corners and move accordingly so I can get things exactly into the spot that I want. So I can hit W to move this down to the bottom of my window area. I'm just going to make things a little bit further back. And then T to move that to the right, move that to the left, make it a little bit smaller. And now I've got some sort of thing that could be considered a ground. Now, also with the game objects here, when I click on the main camera, you can see that we've got transform and then we've got camera. These things are components, and a component is what makes it the particular type of game object that it is. This is a camera because it has a camera component. This is a sprite because it has a sprite renderer component. And what is a sprite? Well, it's a 2D graphic object that we can move around in our world that comes from a bitmap image. So in other words, it's an image that we turn into something that our game can understand, and we call it a sprite. And the sprite renderer also has some fields and some values. So if I click on the white color selector here, I can change the color of our sprite by moving the selectors on the inside of the square area and around the outside to change the color we've selected. And then X out of that when we're done. So now we have changed the color through our sprite renderer to make our square a green color. Okay, let's go ahead and add ourselves another game object. I'll give this to you as a little micro challenge to make sure that you're actually doing this at the same time and not just watching along like a zombie. So I want you to add a new sprite into our scene. Let's see if you can add a circle into our scene. So pause the video, take a moment to do that. Okay, so let's do this together if you didn't manage to figure that out. Right click in the hierarchy, 2D object, sprites, and circle. You can see we've got the option there. Puts in a circle into our world. Let's change the color of this circle to be, I don't know, we'll make it a blue, we'll say. Kind of a mid type of blue. Excellent. So now we have a circle in our world. I'm going to hit W, move this over to the left Scroll in a little bit so I can see it, and there I have a circle. And what I've been doing, kind of accidentally, but I'll pretend I did it deliberately, is I've made a ground and I've made the head of a person that's going to be running around in my little pretend platformer level that I showed you at the start of the video. The next trick I want to show you is that you can duplicate your game objects. So while I'm selected on my circle, either through the hierarchy or from my scene window, if I hit Control D, or it's Command D on the Mac, you can see we now have a new object in our hierarchy. It's called Circle 1, and I can move that to the side, and I now have a second circle. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, at the moment when I move around my object, you can see, oh, the circle goes behind the world. Why is that? What's in front, what's behind? If you look over in the inspector, when you click on a particular game object, you can see the order in layer. So all of these things at the moment are just on the one default layer. And if I say the order is higher, then it will be rendered or drawn on top of the other thing. So if I say this circle is 10, then when I drag it down here, it will appear over the top. This other one, where is it going to be? It's going to be behind. So if you want something to appear on the top of the other things, give it a higher number, for example 10, and if you want it to appear underneath, give it a lower number, for example 0. Okay, so with all that knowledge, I have a challenge for you. And I urge you, anytime you see this challenge slide with the pause button down the bottom and the green border around it, to pause the video and to take on this challenge. This is how you will get the best learning out of this course. Using only basic sprites, create a pretend platformer level, and to note, this is just for fun. We won't be using this in a game. We're just going to play around with it, give you a chance to understand the Unity interface, and then we won't be using it again. So don't put 10 hours into it, just put a little bit of time into it. But once you create something, I'd like for you to share a screenshot of this on the Game Dev TV discussion forum. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'll show you that process when you come back from creating your platformer. So pause the video, take on that challenge. I'll see you back here when you're done. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to get myself a dude. Here's the head, just make it a little bit smaller, and then right click, 2D object, sprite, square, move that into position, just do a little bit of editing T to make a body sort of shape thing. This is not going to be great art, by the way, so set your expectations low. Control D to make another one of these. Hit W, move it over to the right. T to just readjust it a little bit. E to rotate. So what I'm trying to do here is to make a leg. And then, actually, I'll change the color while I'm here. I'm going to click on the color selector, make it the sort of similar bluey color. I'm not trying to be precious about this. If you wanted to, you can copy the hexadecimal number down the bottom here. Copy that. And then click on one of your other things, go to the color selector, and paste that color in, and it should be the same color. Now I'm going to duplicate the other leg and rotate that, and to go through the process. They're the main things I'm going to do, to be honest. Duplicate, change the size, change the shape, rotate, etc. So I'm going to pause the video now and come back when I've been through this process. Okay, this is mostly what I've got. It's inspired by the Pitfall that I played as a young lad. You know, I decided that my character here is too low to the ground, so I drag across all of these things, and then it should move them all at the same time. And I can hit E and rotate all of this character at the same time. Make it look like he's doing some sort of heroic leap to grab this kind of wrong-colored rope. What color's rope? Brown, black? Anyway, not too bad. Clicking on the game window will take away all of the noise like the camera and the grid lines and stuff, so you can just see exactly how it is. And then from here, I'll take my screenshot using Windows, Shift, and then S. That will give me my snipping tool. You can use other tools if you want, but this is just what I've got access to in Windows. Highlight all of that. That will capture that as a screenshot. Now, I'm going to go over to the link that I will have given you against this lecture. So remember, find the resources area and click on the link. And I'm going to just say, here's my silly pretend platformer, and then paste. That will upload the image. And there we go. You should see that at the very, very top of this particular forum post when you're in on the forum, and just click on reply and you can add yours below this, and I'd love to see it. So there we go. That's all for this lecture. I will see you in the next one. Hello again. In this lecture, we're going to write our first piece of code in Visual Studio Code, and we're going to print out to the console a witty, funny statement that our character might be saying in our platformer game. So let's get started. First step in this process is to make sure that Unity knows that the correct IDE is the one we're looking at. So I'm going to go up to Edit and then find Preferences down near the bottom, a few up from the bottom actually. In here, we're looking for, over on the left-hand side, you'll see External Tools. Within External Tools, you can see the External Script Editor, the very first option up there. Make sure it says whichever editor you're using. I'm using Visual Studio Code. That means that anytime we say, hey, open one of our scripts, it will use Visual Studio Code to open it. So that's what we'll do next. In the project area, so in the project tab down here, this big open space, I'm going to right click and click on Create C# script. Now, before you click on C# script, just watch what I'm doing here because there's an important lesson here. So I'm going to do this. Watch for a second. You can see it's highlighted our new behavior, something in there. Can't see the rest of it. But before I click anywhere else, I'm going to type in my name, which will be print to console. That's the name of my script. So print to console. I'm using camel case. That's the convention. So a capital P, capital T, capital C, or uppercase, PTC, for print to console. Now I hit enter. Now, if I click on this, my script just here, you can see we get a little preview within Unity. It's not super useful. We can't edit it in here. We can't do anything with it. That's what we need our IDE for. But this will allow us just to see what's in this script. And you can see it says public class print to console. We'll get into what classes are in the future, but for now we just need to know that it says print to console. Let me show you what can go wrong if you click elsewhere while you're doing this. So you don't need to follow along this particular bit. Right click, create C# script. Now if I click to the anywhere else, it will bake in new behavior script. And if I go to change this name in the future, so change it to something else, donk, when I click on my script, see the preview, you can see it still says new behavior script. The fact that the class name, new behavior script, is different from the file name means that we're going to get all sorts of issues. I just wanted to show you that whole process because I know sometimes we accidentally click somewhere else and then you get all these errors and you're not sure why. So I'm going to delete my something else script. And if you haven't done so already, create your script. So right click, create C# script, and then call it print to console, and then just click on it to double check that the class name print to console matches the file name print to console. Excellent. Now I'm going to double click on that, and what that should do is open up Visual Studio Code, or whichever IDE you said you're using. Let me just rearrange this to get a little bit nicely presented on the screen. Okay, you can make your font larger or smaller, Control minus or Control plus. So I think that's the right size for us together here. And you can see we've got a whole bunch of stuff over on the left and a bunch of stuff in the middle. You'll understand a lot of this stuff as time goes on. For now, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things. The first thing, for us to use Visual Studio Code effectively, we need to add a couple of extensions. So if you click on this bottom icon on the left-hand toolbar here, you can see we've got extensions we can search for. I'll give myself a little bit more space by moving this middle line over. I've already installed the 2 extensions that we need. So if you're a bit of a power user, find those, install those, and you're good to go. The way you find them is up in our search box here. I'm going to search for C#, and that should show me all my options. Look for the one that's by Microsoft, click on that, then over on here you'll see an install button. I've already installed it, so mine says uninstall. Yours should say install, so install that. It should be a very quick process. And then also search for Unity, and that should show us the Unity code snippets. This one here by Kleber Silver, and that once again is a click install. So I'm going to remove what I've got in my search, and you can see I've got my 2 extensions installed here. Why do we need extensions? Well, these are the things that give us the cleverness, the autocomplete and the hints and all those kind of things about what we're doing within our code. So where has our code gone? Well, you can see we've got a couple of tabs up here, just like in a browser. I don't need to have this last tab, so I'm going to find my print to console.cs. There's a lot more information in here. There's a lot more heavy lifting or heavy power that we can look at in the future. For example, if I click on the Explore tab, you can see that print to console is within my project structure. I've got my assets directory, which matches my assets directory. You can see underneath here, I've still got Unity hanging around that you can see, but we won't worry about looking at all this at the moment because we're just going to be dealing in pretty simple structures. So I'm going to click on this one more time, the Explorer, and that will close it up. So now we can just be paying attention to our code in here. Okay, so when we create a new script in Unity, there's some content that's automatically put in there. For now, we don't need to dig into all of that. I just want to draw your attention to one important area, and this is start. This is a function or a method that when we push the play button, let me just pop back to Unity, this play button just here, it will say play and do all the things we need to do in our game, show us what's going on through the main camera into the game window. And you can see, well, I haven't told it to do anything yet. I've just kind of got an image and stuff, and I've actually got a little bit of an error down here because I didn't do my layers correctly on my water. Let me just quickly do that. We'll put that at 5. Okay, there we go. So we talked about layers in the last lecture, so it was underneath my ground, but there it is. We can see it now. So not much is happening when I click the play button, but when I click the play button, start will be called. So in other words, start will happen. What we will do is make sure that Unity and Visual Studio Code are talking to each other properly. So within start, just follow along with me here. Trust me on this. We're going to type debug with a capital D .log, L-O-G, open my parentheses. So these are the round brackets above the 9 and 0 on your keyboard. And then we're going to use quotation marks just to the left of the enter key. And we can type in here whatever we want to print to the console. So I'll show you the console in just a moment. We'll print in here, I'm printing to the console, a very inspired message. And then down at the end of our statement, this is a statement here we're creating, we need a semicolon. Semicolon in C# is kind of like putting a full stop or a period when you're writing a sentence. So we need our semicolon down the end to say, I'm done with this particular thing. Now you can see there's a round dot up here on our tab, Print to Console. If we do Control S to save, now we get our cross mark. So it shows we've now saved it. We have to save it before this takes effect. Back over into Unity. So I've got my script and I've created my very first statement. Before this will do anything, I need to put it into my game. I need to attach it to a game object so that it happens. Just sitting it down here in the assets directory, this is on the hard drive. It's like, cool, I'm ready to go. But for it to get in the game, literally get in the game, we need to put it somewhere. So I'm going to click on, where's my dude's head? There it is. Got circle. I'm just going to rename this to head, just so I remember in the future. So I just clicked over in the inspector. So I did that quickly. Clicked in the inspector and just changed the name from circle to head. You don't need to do that, but for me, it's just so I remember where it is. And now I'm going to grab my script and drag it into this big open area underneath the add component button, let go, and you can see print to console has now been added as a component to the head game object. That means that it will run because it's in our scene. And what is the console? Well, the console is this tab over here, which allows us to print out information just for us, just for game developers to look at. The player will never see this, but it's a great place to show information about what's going on in our game. If we now click on the play button, you can see in our console, it's going to print, I'm printing to the console. Excellent. We've written some code, but that's a bit dull. We can do better. So I'm going to give this to you as a challenge to make sure it's all making sense. Change the content of your print statement, or of our print statement, to something that a player might be saying in your pretend platformer. For example, for me, I'm going to change it to ate too many donuts, to imply that he's not quite able to reach that rope. So there's your challenge. Change the print statement to be something else and print it to the console. When you've done that, I'll see you back here for my solution. Okie dokie. I'm going to find my debug.log, just highlight all of this in here and say 8 ... to ... many ... donuts! Exclamation point, just for fun. Save that. Remember, you've got to save it for it to change. Click back on here. Sometimes Unity is going to do a little bit of recompiling and thinking and updating stuff. That's all pretty normal and natural. And look down in the console here. When I click on play, there's not much going on with our game, but our guy is saying, ate too many donuts. And that's the foundations of us writing code in Visual Studio Code and then having Unity being able to use that code when it's applied to a game object. So there we go. Great work in this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm here to show you where to ask questions and get support so you don't get stuck while taking this course. For all of these and everything else I talk about in this video, you'll find the links in the resources, either to the right or down below. If you can't find English captions where you're watching this, I've provided a YouTube link in resources explaining how to get them. First, we have the Game Dev TV Community Forum. This is a great place to ask questions and share your work. You'll get a ton of support from our teaching assistants and lots of encouragement from other students. When you're asking a question, please give as much information as possible and include any relevant code. This really helps the teaching assistants get you unstuck quicker. For more real-time chats, head over to our super active Discord server. You can ask specific questions in the relevant channels, or there's the lounge for more general game dev chat. We have thriving communities on Facebook with dedicated groups for Unity, Unreal, Blender, and 2D art. This is another great place to share your progress through the course and ask questions. And talking about sharing, if you do share your work on Twitter or Instagram, then please tag us. We love to see your creations. You can read about other game dev students and their journeys, as well as get hints and tips over on the blog. And we have a weekly live cast where you can get industry insights and advice from game dev veterans. I hope that helps keep you unstuck. Now go enjoy the course. We can't wait to see what you create.
For all of the Game Dev TV courses, whenever an instructor makes a change to anything in the project, they commit that to the repo. What does that mean? Well, what I'm looking at here is the repository for the obstacle course sectioned within the Complete Unity 3D course. This is a course that I've created. That's why I'm showing it to you as an example. This might not be the course you're going through at the moment, but I'm just using this as an example to show you. We host our repository either on GitLab or GitHub. They're both very similar. The interface is a little bit different. I'm showing you GitLab at the moment because that's what we're using nowadays, but some of our older projects might be using GitHub as the place that it's storing things. And so you've clicked on the link in the resources section that says this lecture's GitLab commit or this lecture's GitHub commit. So you found that in the resource against the lecture. You've clicked on it. It'll take you to something like this. It'll show you the name of the lecture. That should match up to the particular lecture you're watching at the moment. And you can see all the changes. So there's a lot of gobbledygook in here that you don't really need to know about. Particularly here in Unity, there's a lot of things that'll change within the scene that don't necessarily make sense. Usually what you're going to be interested in is what has changed within the code. So you can see here the .cs file within Unity, that's the script file. And I can see nice and clearly that the red line is something that's been removed. So we remove that line of code, and the green line is something which has been added. If you're interested in a file that's not within the ones that have changed, then you can click on Browse Files up in the top right, or Files over in the left-hand side of your menu. So you click on Files, that will show you here are all the files from the entire project as it finishes up. So this is the finished state once I've recorded all of the lectures, and this is the entire project. So if you want to go and grab the entire project as it looks at the end, check it out, play around with it, not a problem. Up in the top right, you'll see a download button. You can click on that and download as a zip file. Or if you already know a little bit about how repositories work and you've set yourself up with an application such as SourceTree, which I've got just here. This is an example of SourceTree. You can click on clone and clone that. I'm not going to go through that exact process at the moment. If you want to know a whole bunch more about using Git, then check out Ben's Git Smart course. That's all about using Git and GitHub and SourceTree, and it's a great source to know more about using source control for your own projects. But for now, I'm just showing you how to get access to our projects that we're changing as we go through the lecture. And you can do that just by clicking on download. Now that will, like I said, download the end state of the project. I'm just going to hit back on my browser to take you back where we were. This is the incrementing score. This is the link that I got against the lecture. If I click Browse Files over here now, I can see the files as they are at this point, up to this point in the project. It won't show me the end state. It won't have any spoilers. It's just up to where I am in this part of the project, which might be what you need. You can navigate through, say, to assets and find one of the other scripts, or if there's any other art files you're looking for, etc., you can find those within here. I might want to have a look in this file, click on that. When I click on it, it'll show me this entire file, all the information. I might say, oh, that looks really different to mine. I can just highlight all this and copy it and paste it into my project. So if you get really stuck, you can always go and grab our code that we're working on in the lecture, in the project that we've already recorded. You can always go and grab that code. Okay, back into the project. I've shown you how to access the current lecture. What if you're looking for a previous lecture or a future lecture? I can click over on here for history, but that will only show the history up to this point because it's within the context of my current commit. And you can see this commit SHA in here. This is the big old string of numbers and letters that says this is the particular commit that relates to this particular project in this particular course for this particular company. That's all cool. But I'm looking for all of the commits. So instead of clicking on history over there, I'm going to over on the left-hand side, click on commits. That will show me all of the commits up to this point once again. So if I navigate my way up to the top and find obstacle course for the project, that will take me all the way to the highest level. Now click up here where it says 17 commits up at the top. That will show me the history as well. So there's a few ways to get to things. If you're in GitHub, not GitLab, then be resourceful and have a look for the same names of things. You're looking for history, you're looking for commits, and you're looking for to be able to download or browse files if that's what you would like to do. Okay, that's all for this quick introduction of accessing our projects. I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming video.